and thank you for checking out the Hump Day edition of the Sportsline Podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Well, as we like to say in these parts, if you can make it in the Hamilton, Halton, and Niagara area, you can make it anywhere. And it's those teams, athletes, executives, and broadcasters who will be front and center on the Sportsline Podcast. Well, for over 2 decades, this Niagara region native has built a very impressive resume as a radio and television broadcaster and has extended his talents as a journalist. He built a name for himself on a national and provincial level at the Old Score television network and at 680 News. Yet, he chose to return to his roots of delivering sports news in his backyard. Consider Rod Mawhood, a champion of the Ice Dogs, River Lions, Jackfish, Brock Sports, and the many local athletes to do Niagara proud on a national and international level. He is the brainchild and voice of the Niagara Sports Report. Rod Mawhood, this is like well overdue. Really happy to have you on the Sportsline Podcast. So been looking forward to chatting with you.
Bubba, so good. Obviously, we've run into each other in press boxes over the years, but you brought back some memories with the introduction there of my broadcasting past. So thanks for having me.
Right on, folks. There's so much to talk about, Rod, but I got to come at you with this breaking news. We still don't know all the details. The Canadian women's soccer scandal in France.
Wow.
We've got this big happiness about the Olympics, and now it's a Canadian coach and analyst has been kicked out of the games for using a drone to tape New Zealand training sessions. Your thoughts?
Not once, but twice, potentially even more.
Yes.
They used the drone. Unbelievable. I just hope this doesn't affect the women on the pitch. Obviously, days away. The team they were using the drone to watch is the team they're opening up against, ranked 28th in the world in New Zealand. Why they would even attempt this, and obviously an unaccredited staff member, I believe his name is Joseph Lombardo, an assistant coach, kicked out of the Olympics now, sent home immediately. Just before we were on here now, FIFA's investigating. This is a huge story. You go to ESPN, and ESPN is discussing this story in the United States. So again, let's hope this doesn't affect the women on the pitch. This is very disappointing, disheartening. But yeah, a lead story in sports, not only in Canada and locally, but around the world.
Yeah, we wake up to the news of this, which just blew me away. I had to listen to it a couple of times to really I know there was some news that broke yesterday, and a press release came out from the Canadian Olympic Committee, and they sort of said anything. But I kind of dusted it off like it was sort of like, eh. And then I realized what a big story this has been. And the fact that the Canadian women are the defending Olympic champions, I'm wondering if they're going to get themselves into a situation now where everyone's going to kind of said, well, you guys had an advantage. No matter, like, they're in a no-win situation, Rod, I feel.
Exactly, and I called it this morning on my Sportscast, Drone Gate, because anything that happens, right, you're right. Any team that they're in their I wondered if they were somehow spying. You think with Belichick and the Patriots and everything they were accused of, still to this day, right? Deflategate and Spygate. And yeah, this is going to be tied in with the Canadian women's soccer program for years, if not decades. Very disappointing.
You talked about it off the top of you and I bumping into press in each other in breast boxes. And I do remember, I think the first time back at Old Iverwin Stadium, you were doing some coverage of the Tiger Cats with the Score back at that time. And I was just in the beginning years at Sportsnet as well, too. Can you talk to me about, I think about what I think about those early days of being a sports reporter. What are yours?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. We can go back a little bit further, Bubba. I was a goaltender, played up to junior B, and said if I can't play sports, I want to broadcast sports. Went to your backyard there, went to Mohawk College, took broadcast journalism, and was lucky enough to land my internship at 680 News in Toronto and got hired right away as a 19-year-old. So I was very young when I got in the business, and then made the jump to television. Just really enjoyed, and we always say this, all the Score alumni, but think of all the people that were on the Score television network that have gone on to do bigger and better things. And just amazing. And those days that I still miss, as much as Tim Horton Field is nice, I still miss Iverwin just because of its location. in the Hammer, in the Steel City, and covering those and the days of Danny McManus. And, I'm sure you've got a lot more stories being right there on a daily basis, where I was just there on a weekly basis. But yeah, some great memories, Bubs.
You had that opportunity at the Score, and you're right. Elliot Friedman, the cabbie, we could go on and on. So many names that got their start there. I thought what I liked about the Score, and we had limitations at Sportsnet, even though we tried to be more fun than TSN. But I thought the Score did it. They started to dive into basketball and other sports that at the time weren't getting the proper respect and coverage. Even more American sports, you guys really were a little bit more risky than we were.
Yeah, no, that's the best way to put it. And I remember specifically, and you remember the show as well, Court Cuts. Just the basketball highlights, right? And you think what Vince Carter and the Raptors did upon their arrival, and the Score took it to another level. And you look, obviously, with the Olympics just around the corner, and the men's and women's basketball teams, and how much this sport has grown. And I think the Score had a big touch in that culturally to bring basketball to another level in this country. Yeah, pretty special.
You make the decision to cover local sports. Why?
For years. So again, lucky. Worked in the Big Smoke, as they called it, for Toronto for over 15 years. And during that time, all the local news directors and everything down here, the stations are owned by Bell Media. It was Astral Media then. The radio stations just said, Rod, whenever you want to come home, let us know. And just a family. And you can imagine, we still say it to this day, and I couldn't imagine I was doing it. With the GO Train schedule, Bubs, I had to drive into Toronto, because if I'm doing a Jays game at night and goes into extra innings, and I remember some of those, 18, 19, 23 extra inning games, the last train leaves Toronto at 12:43. So I had to drive into Toronto. So, and some of my 9 a.m. shifts at the radio station at 6:80, I could leave at 6 a.m. from Niagara and still not get there on time. So I think it was just a time in my lifestyle to dial it back. Was still doing a lot of announcing down here, even though I wasn't working in mainstream media. And I just said, I'm going to make the commitment. And Tom McConnell, I think you know Tom, good football guy, ex-Western Mustang. We won't say that too much, but came to me and said, Rod, we want you to do a show, but here's the caveat. It has to be all Niagara-based athletes or connected to Niagara. So to have Carter Verhaeghe, who's obviously in your neck of the woods a couple weeks ago on my show from Waterdown, of course, former Niagara Ice Dogs captain, Muhammad Ahmed's at the Olympics. Some of the connected athletes. Andre DeGrasse I had on a couple of months ago. Here's the connection to Niagara, Bubs. People don't realize he has his own wine called 1962 His Time at the Olympics in the 200-meter at Pilotary Estates Winery in Niagara-on-the-Lake. So it's amazing to see these connected to Niagara athletes and, of course, the Niagara natives.
You also, and I've never done this, I've never even considered it, but I think you're kind of like that four-tool baseball player. You kind of do it all with the radio and the television and the announcing, but you extended it by becoming a writer and that journalistic aspect of it, and you've done a great job at writing as well.
No, I like that. Just because, and I will say this honestly, and you'll appreciate this, and we'll have a good laugh about it. I always get asked, what do you like the best? I like radio because I say radio is theater of the mind. And you think of sports. I tell students, broadcasting students, people that want to get into sports broadcasting, if you want to learn a game and learn the intricacies of a game, listen to it on radio. Because you have to pick up, you have to picture it. Television, a little different, print. But I like the fact, getting back to print, your original question, because I can expand on those stories. When I have a sportscast, I have 75 seconds, 90 seconds. My show is 1 hour, and I have to get 4 guests in that hour. So, 10 or 15 minutes for each guest. But print, you can delve into things a little bit more. So I like all aspects, but I love radio the most just because I remember listening to WGR and Rick Jenneret growing up, and just going to bed with AM radio on and waking up to it too is something I always did.
I did the same thing as you. I mean, from just out in Burlington and Oakville, listening to WGR and WBEN with the Bills and the Sabres for all those years. And let's get into the Niagara Sports Report, which I think is such a great thing, and I think the people in your area, whether you know it or not, I think you should by now, really appreciate what you're doing. But what people also don't realize, it's a big undertaking. You're the host, you're the producer, you're the everything, right? There's a lot of responsibility to put a one show together a week after week, and I've done it for, how many years now?
Yeah, we're going on 6 years, 7 years. And you're
amazing,
right.
Outstanding. Congratulations.
Thanks, Bubs. And you're right. You don't realize it. Before we connected today, I'm on the phone trying to set up guests, get the sponsors together. I'm live on remote this upcoming weekend, so I want to make sure the charities that are involved are mentioned. So there is a lot behind it, and sometimes it takes multiple texts and multiple emails to land. As you can appreciate, you're doing the same thing with what you're doing. Great work, and lucky enough that we connected earlier this week and you said, hey, you're available today. I am, but you probably try to get guests that takes you weeks to land. Same thing. I'm going to be honest with you. Andrew Tinish, former Brock Badger, sport management student, along with Kyle Dubas. I've been trying to get Andrew the last couple of weeks, obviously going into the draft. Now the trade deadline. He texted me back. It took me 3 texts. He texted me back. He goes, Rod, can we connect after the trade deadline? So that made me think, obviously he's busy as Vice President of International Scouting, trying to see what the Jays can land for these the players that are available. So, appreciate what you do, and thank you very much for the mutual respect.
Yeah, I think it's great to see, and you're right. But I will say this, kind of like yourself, I do the 6 o'clock little sports report, generally 6 to 7 minutes on the 6 o'clock news report. But I do love this format. I love doing the podcast. It excites me. We get to not do 5 or 6 minutes and clip, boop, 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 boop. Having an opportunity to talk, get to know the story, and as you described with your writing, it's so much more of a pleasure, and I think a pleasure to listen and read as well too.
Exactly. No. Well said. I just remember some of them, and I can appreciate Mike Keenan years ago when I first came on, and this actually goes back to before the Niagara Sports Report started. Didn't want to do an interview, and at the end, he goes, Rod, you didn't ask me about my coaching. You asked me about my life, what I like away from the rink. And I try to delve into those stories to find out how it all started. And it's amazing to think, like the Andre DeGrasse story is just crazy. He saw a friend run, and he said, I'm going to try that. And then a week later, the coach said, wait a minute, you could be something special. But, he played basketball growing up and didn't even realize how fast he was. And look where he is years later with these multiple Olympic appearances.
Speaking of the Olympics, I know that you have done a masterful job of identifying talent in the Niagara region, and some of them are on the Olympic stage. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the people that you've run into that, in maybe weeks, maybe even days, we will be getting to know in a hurry?
Yeah, the big one obviously is third Olympics, and I've become close friends with him. Actually, it's great. And there's another guy that sometimes it's hard to reach base, but he always reaches back and says, "Sorry, Rod." Muhammad Ahmed, Mo's speed, coming off obviously a medal performance at the last Olympics, and just have so much respect for him. And if you go back, and I'll probably get emotional thinking about this, but him trying out in grade 8 or grade 9 or grade 7 or grade 8, whatever it was, he didn't have shoes to start running when he became a track athlete and became interested in it. And you think of that. Hannah Taylor, Brock Wrestling Club. She calls St. Catharines home, originally from PEI, but has been here for 10 years. She'll be part of the wrestling team. Kristen Kitt, long time coxswain, part of the women's 8, of course, that they had the big gold before performance at the last Olympics. Emma Van Dyke is a swimmer from Port Colborne. She is in the Paralympics, so she'll be involved in that. Coaches, and him, former Olympian Marty Calder, part of Wrestling Canada and the Brock Wrestling Club. And my last guest on my show last week, fellow coach with Brock Wrestling and Wrestling Canada, is Dave Cawley. So a number of Niagara-related and swimming, rowing, and track all going to Paris, or already in Paris, as you said, and hopefully coming home with some kind of colored medal around their necks.
Are you getting that feeling in Niagara region, kind of like we do in Hamilton too, where yes, you're cheering for Canada, but there is that sort of local pride as well too that people really want to latch onto?
Great segue, because Mo's obviously there, and Mo trains in Oregon and everything else, and some of them are already away. This upcoming Saturday, there's kind of an Olympic send-off for Hannah Taylor. Marty Calder's putting it on, asked me to reach out to the mayor to make sure he's there, Matt Sisko. And yeah, there is definitely that excitement around the local athletes and local talent, and I think that will continue through the games. Another one that I didn't know about is gone as a rowing official is Ken Campbell. They call him Soupy, and he's had decades of connections here to rowing in St. Catharines that has deep roots. He's going as an official to Paris as well. So there's that connection. So yeah, through emails, through friends that are going to catch it. I got an email from a coworker that's cousins. Rod, get everything in this week because I'm headed to Paris. I said, I'm going to watch my cousin. Guess who her cousin is? Bubs, you're going to love this. Dylan Brooks.
What?
She says, so I get this email. I'm going to watch my cousin in Paris. I said, who's your cousin? She says, Dylan Brooks. So she gave me the whole spiel. He's got the villain persona, but he's really a nice guy. And when I know that, he comes to a lot of River Lions games. Mm-hmm. But he does have that persona, but it's just amazing that these people have these connections. It's a small world.
It really is. And I, even from starting to do this podcast and sort of saying at the end, if you know someone that deserves a little love or attention or a team, and now I'm starting to get feedback from people, whether it be through social media or emails, and the stories are incredible, right?
Yep.
We just don't know them. They're all being uncovered, and sometimes I'm overwhelmed by them. And some of them, like you said, the separation, 5 degrees of separation between many athletes and stuff. Just great stories. And so many of them have gone on for years and years that I think a pleasure for someone like yourself and myself that we get the honor to be able to present some of these athletes. Now, speaking of athletes, sorry?
I was just going to say, what you said there, and people don't realize, people sometimes are hesitant to reach out to you or I because they said, Bubs won't talk about it, Rod won't talk about it. Email us, reach out to us, because there's a story behind the story that might connect with a lot of people, and they don't realize it. And then they realize, Rod, I should have reached out years ago. And the same thing I'm sure you hear about. Yeah.
Yeah, and here's, I think, one for you and I that we share. You and I, as we talked about off the very top with the Tiger Cats, we do have a love for the Canadian Football League and all the many athletes that are participating over the years. And there's certainly one that I would consider a budding star that, for some reason, having his growth stunted. I will put it that way politely. Mm-hmm. And then we're talking about quarterback Trey Ford, that is with the Edmonton Elks. First of all, what do you know about him from the Niagara region before we get into his Elks career?
Just his success at a perennial powerhouse in A.N. Meyer and what he did. And then he goes on to Waterloo with his brother. And Terrell obviously is the first one. Everybody thought Trey was going to sign that contract south of the border. Terrell signs it obviously with Green Bay, now back in the CFL. But just a winner, got the job done, a leader, and the other story that people don't realize that he does on the side, hence the fact, another reason why he should be on the field in the CFL, is he's a track star too. Not a track star, but yeah, you know what? I guess we can say track star because pretty darn successful on the track as well. And that just butted, obviously, Meyer, and then Waterloo, and then the CFL, and to see him progress and to join the shows over the years with everything he's accomplished and the workouts for south of the border, and to have his twin brother Terrell there as well is a pretty special story. And let's hope with everything that's happening in that CFL city called the City of Champions, they let a champion in Trey Ford run their offense soon.
Well, let's go right at it, because you and I know the shirts are actually floating around Edmonton, but I think you and I would be wearing the T-shirts that say "Free Trey Ford." Is there any reason? I mean, I have my reasons. I'd love your perspective on why a guy like that has actually, I think, won more games than as a quarterback, and a young quarterback, than anyone else in the franchise of recent time. Like, why isn't he playing, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. It's shocking to me.
That's my question before, and obviously they made some changes, right? The coaches. Maybe there was something there. The coach, whomever, didn't trust him, didn't like him, has this feeling that, we can look at our careers too, Bubs, and they said, you know what? Bubs or Rod's not ready to go. Let's go with the veteran. And maybe that's what's happened. That's the only thing I can think of, that they're a little, and obviously if there's one mark against Trey, they say that he doesn't have the best arm or the most accurate arm. But the only way you're going to improve that is to get in there and play. And you know that if someone isn't open and he doesn't complete a 30-yard pass, he can scamper for 11 yards for that first down. And that's what people are wearing the T-shirts for, free Trey Ford, because it can't get any worse for the Elks. So let's hope Trey Ford is in there. And next week we can both wear Trey Ford is free.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're right. There has been his arm. Okay. Like, you want me to start listing quarterbacks that did not have rocket arms? Like, that's a special talent that some have. But he can throw. He can fit ball in tight windows, and he can run. And it just amazes me. And part of a bigger picture, Rod, is the fact that this is the Canadian Football League, and we've got a guy. Nathan Rourke kind of opened the door a little bit, or at least I shouldn't say open the door. Opened eyes. Give Canadian quarterbacks an opportunity.
Oh, we go back in my days when I started covering the Buffalo Bills with Flutie, obviously arriving in Buffalo, right? Open eyes. No, he can't do it. He did it, right? I'm not saying that Trey's going to be on that same trajectory, and obviously it took years and decades with Doug in the CFL, but to give him the opportunity, and you just said, the other thing that people don't realize, obviously with the bigger field in the CFL, if he scampers, he can throw on the run. He's not going to throw for 40 yards, but with that space to create space from running, he can create openings for those 5-10-yard pickups that any offense would like.
Well, rant over. Fair enough, Rod. Hey, I'm going to end up on this one here, but this is a fun one for you. This is a wild card for you. Right now in the Niagara region, we have two franchises that are at the absolute top of their game right now. In the IBL, it would be the Welland Jackfish, first place. Certainly would be favorites to repeat as champions. And then in the CEBL, there is the Niagara River Lions, who are filling the place at Meridian Center. They're exciting. They've clinched a playoff spot. They were clinched first place. They only got one game left before the postseason starts. But I'm going to put you on the spot there, brother. Which one of those two teams has the better chance of going all the way?
Going to say it just because they've been there and done that. And the Welland Jackfish and Vic, as much as I love the River Lions and I've, of course, announced for both those teams, Vic knows it. Vic told me before the season, Rod, we can get there. We can get to the dance, but we've got to get past that spot. And the River Lions are there again. You missed this too. 9-0 at home. One game left at home. They can have their first ever perfect season at Meridian Center. Let's hope, and then they're going to obviously host that game in early August, the playoff game. But I would say that Welland, just because they've been there, know how to do it, have that taste now, that Welland is more favorite to bring a championship again back to the Niagara region.
Best part for the Niagara region is, and I think for both of these franchises, that they're being well supported and they're well identified in the community.
Yeah, the Welland Jackfish is an unbelievable story, and you know this, obviously, moving from Burlington and what they've done. They are the ideal franchise. People come. They had the All-Star game last weekend just to see what they've done and what Ryan Harrison has done. And just a quiet guy. You've had him on the show, and I've watched that before. A totally different guy away from the ballpark, different personality. You would not know that he is the president and director of fun if you met him away from the pond, a.k.a. Welland Stadium.
He certainly is. It's hard to believe with some of the pictures and videos I've seen of him running around entertaining the crowd, but he's got that secret little love for just putting on a performance and does a great job of it. Speaking of great performance, brother, like Rod, fantastic. Like, again, we hope we can keep in touch here, get you back on the show when something's going down. You know that this spot or whenever you have an opportunity to come into the studio, would love to have you. again, the Niagara region well represented by yourself in terms of reporting, giving people an opportunity to voice their stories, and of course let them know in terms of reporting of what's going on a daily basis. You do a wonderful job of it. I mean, the many years that you've put in. So congratulations on that. Continued success, and thank you so much for joining us on the Sportsline Podcast.
Mutual respect, Bubs. Thank you very much. Enjoyed it thoroughly, and we could talk for hours. So anytime, I'll be back.
Looking forward to it, brother. Take care. That's your Sportsline Podcast for the day, and you've just seen and heard. We love talking sports, especially people that are local. We got to love that local. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. Subscribe. If you have something to say, please comment. We love hearing from you. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much, and we'll see you tomorrow.